Tonight on The Local Live. Election Day 2017 is over and we have a recap of our local races. In a tight county executive race, local and live reporters are on the scene at Astorino and Latimer's headquarters. And finally, on tonight's roundtable, our newly elected public officials will be here to talk to us. These stories and more coming up. Good evening, it's Thursday, November 9th. I'm Aurora Folks. Welcome to The Local Live. Now let's get started. Election Day 2017 brought out hundreds of community members to their local polls. The Democrats won big in our area.
Election night 2017 was a success for Democrats in the Village of Mamaroneck mayoral and trustee race. Tom Murphy won the Village of Mamaroneck's mayoral race against Republican nominee George Mergadichian by 877 votes, pulling a 60 to 40% victory.
This is the beginning of taking back our village, taking back our county, taking back our country.
Nora Lucas won 57% of votes in the Village of Mamaroneck trustee race, beating Maria DeRose by 628 votes.
That I'm really thrilled to be the next village trustee of the Village of Mamaroneck, and I can't wait to start work. Maybe not tomorrow.
Incumbent Westchester Legislator Catherine Parker has been re-elected for her third term in office against Norman Rosenblum with 66% of votes.
Thank you for recognizing that I'm part of the community. We're in this community together, the Sound Shore, and I've been so gratified throughout this campaign.
Now, the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees will be occupied by a Democratic majority, like the town of Mamaroneck and the Village of Larchmont. The newly elected officials will take office in January of 2018.
All three candidates in the town of Mamaroneck ran unopposed. Incumbent County Legislator Catherine Parker was re-elected to a third term, and State Senator George Latimer was elected as the new county executive. And remember, to watch for our full election coverage, go online to www.lmctv.org. Shayla Navarro was at Rob Astorino's party headquarters as the night unfolded. She has a behind-the-scenes look at what went down.
It's election night and we're here reporting from White Plains. We're at the Astorino headquarters in the Crown Plaza Hotel. Everybody is expecting for the results, and we're hoping to find some familiar faces to report the latest on who will be the next county executive and who might be the next county legislator. Astorino supporters patiently wait, hopeful to keep the county in Republican hands for one more term. As we scouted the room, we noticed Village of Mamaroneck Mayor Norman Rosenblum also waiting for results. This is his first time running for Westchester County Legislator against incumbent Catherine Parker.
It is what it is. The polls are closed, so it's already predetermined. And I always enjoyed being a part of the process. You know, whatever happens, it appears from some of the numbers that are coming up that the campaign strategy of the Democrats may be taking hold, and that is a decision on President Trump more than local questions. But it is what it is and remains.
As the clock is running, some early results reported by News 12 have George Latimer as the projected winner. But supporters like 19-year-old Gregory Purdy are not ready to give up.
Sure, well, I don't think by any means that this is, concession for Rob. All the numbers aren't in yet. There's still a lot of time to go. I really think Rob has a shot to pull this all out. So I really think Rob is still going to pull this out, and that's why I'm pumping everybody up. This shouldn't be a funeral home. We're here at the headquarters. We should really get excited because you know what? Win or lose, I think we're on the right side of the issues here, and I think that's something to be proud of.
With County Executive-elect Latimer a few minutes ago and congratulated him on his victory. He was very gracious, and George and I have been friends for quite a long time and served together as well. And in the heat of an election, we're at this point, and now we can go back to being friends.
We were hopeful to have an on-camera interview with Rob Astorino. We met with Charlie Greco. He's only 17, and he has worked 70 hours as an intern on the county executive campaign. He says this is not the end.
And, in regards to him not taking it home tonight, it's a hit. but this isn't the end for us. You know, he'll be around, and it's not like we're gonna go crawl and, you know, cry.
We just heard Rob Astorino give his speech, thanking his supporters, and he said that he's going to be working with George Latimer, making the transition very easy. Many supporters are very sad for the news. We were able to be right in the front, and I was trying to do a Facebook Live transmission from there, and I was able to ask him one question: is he running for governor? He says no. So we'll see what will happen next. So for the Local Live, this is Sherry Navarro on election night.
New York State Senator George Latimer won the seat for Westchester County Executive. Local Live reporter Marel Cathwari was at the Coliseum in White Plains to celebrate with Latimer's supporters on election night.
Senator George Latimer is ready to get to work as Westchester County Executive after a long campaign against incumbent Rob Astorino. Democratic supporters eager for a change celebrated his victory at his White Plains headquarters. Supporters of all ages showed up in droves, and Latimer's stance on gun control was the major factor that brought him to his final victory.
And George Latimer has been a good gun sense candidate. Rob Astorino, you know, when he ran for governor, he wanted to repeal the SAFE Act, which was a bipartisan measure that was passed right after Sandy Hook, saving lives, keeping domestic abusers from getting guns.
Latimer supporters believed more in his policies and were not persuaded by attacks from the Astorino campaign.
That I know the voters did want to see a change. They wanted to see someone who represents the voters. I know George Latimer is a good person.
The fact that Senator Latimer has run a strong campaign that was able to, one, focus on the issues and really bring to bear a lot of the concerns that a lot of Westchester residents have with Rob Astorino's connections to Donald Trump and his potential corruption scandal that's brewing with the Recknitz testimony.
Latimer won the county executive seat 57% to 43%, bringing back the county in Democratic hands after 4 years.
Congratulations, you just won. How do you feel? What's next?
I feel pretty exuberant. Tonight I think we enjoy the moment, but starting tomorrow after I sleep in, it's about trying to put together a transition team, looking for the best qualified commissioners, and then starting to implement the policies we talked about in the campaign.
Any last words for Astorino?
Look, I think it was a tough race. Certainly I've never been in a race this difficult in my life, and having had a race last year, I'd like to go a couple of years without a race.
The voters have spoken and they want a more progressive Westchester. Rob Astorino's spirit campaigns were no match for Latimer supporters. I'm Marel Cathwari reporting for the Local Live.
Coming up next, we'll have incumbent County Legislator Catherine Parker and our newly elected Village of Mamaroneck Mayor Tom Murphy. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Maura Carlin. We're doing this in 2 segments tonight. In the first segment, we have Catherine Parker, a newly re-elected county legislator for our community. Catherine, thank you for joining us. Congratulations.
I'm happy to be here. And by the way, we are joined by Den 1 of PAC 2 for the city of Rye. These are the Weeblos.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. So, Catherine, you just re-elected, but you've also got a new county executive coming in and a change in the composition of the Board of Legislators. Tell us about the change in the composition and what that means for the legislature.
Yes, Tuesday night's election was absolutely phenomenal for what happened with the Board of Legislators. We went from having a Democratic minority, basically, to having a full majority of the board. We went from having 7 members of the Democratic caucus to hopefully having both Michael Kaplowitz and Virginia Perez come back with our new people that are elected to the board, so that we have a total of 12 Democratic legislators, and then there will be the 5 Republican legislators. So it's very exciting. I think it's wonderful with George Latimer, who's been now will be our new county executive, that we'll have a board and a county executive that can work together and really do some wonderful things for Westchester County.
Now, George doesn't come in until January, and there are things that are still happening right now. And 2 in particular I want to talk to you about. What happens to them? And the first one, let's just start with the news that was out today that County Executive Astorino has selected someone to run the airport.
Yeah.
What happens?
Well, hopefully nothing happens with this. I think given that really County Executive Astorino is in the last few weeks of his term, and we're talking about an agreement that would bind us for 40 years. I think to do this correctly, it needs to wait until the new term. And really the jury's still out whether or not we actually want this, but I think it could be vetted. And I think it really is dependent on the new makeup of the Board of Legislators, as well as obviously our new county executive. Again, given the length of time of this agreement, I really would hesitate to see this kind of pushed through just in a very fast way in order to either plug a budget for 2018 or again to tie Westchester County to something that, whether we like it or not, we'd be stuck with for 40 years.
The mechanics of it going through, it does require a vote of the legislature, doesn't it?
It does, and it requires a vote of 12. And I think that there's enough hesitation on the part of many of my colleagues who are in agreement that, again, we're talking about 40 years. We really want to vet this and make sure that it's the right move, or if it's not the right move, then we don't want to be bound to it. So I think that it really requires, a real hard look, maybe in the new term, but not to end the term that we are leaving December 31st.
Now, you mentioned that you believe it was to plug that $15 million hole in the budget. From what I'd read, the hole's been plugged by sales tax. Is that true?
That is true, yes. So because
the urgency is no longer there.
Yes, that's correct. And in fact, for 2017, because, and here's the interesting thing for those watching at home, they probably are not happy that gas prices are significantly higher than where they were last year. And that's where the sales tax revenue comes from. That's what plugged the hole for 2017.
Well, this gets us right to the budget, which is something I think that it gets proposed next week or adopted next week before the change in the composition and the change in county executive.
Right. So we will be handed the operating budget on Monday. So I haven't seen it yet, but that's when we will begin the work, going through the budget, bringing in our departments. And yes, it'll be passed by, this is County Executive Astorino's budget. It is up to the Board of Legislators, the current makeup of the Board of Legislators, to create the budget for 2018.
And when does it have to be approved? What's the deadline?
Well, the deadline is actually by the end of the year, but it will probably be approved sometime in mid-December.
And does the incoming county executive get a say in any of it?
He does not. He does not get a say. He will inherit this budget.
Okay. Catherine, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to your den there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Maura. It was a pleasure.
Have a good night. And we'll be back in a moment. Tom Murphy, the newly elected mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, will be joining us for a conversation. I am now joined by Mayor-elect Tom Murphy, who was just elected to be mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck. Congratulations.
Thank you, Maura.
So right now you're on the town board, December 4th. You go off that December 3rd and December 4th.
I will be sworn in as the village mayor.
Right.
I just want to point out, my first interview on LMC TV was with you in 2001.
That is correct. I remember that too.
Time flies.
It's been a long time, yes. So what's your top priority, day one?
I think the top priority, it's hard to have the top priority, but one of the things we're going to do right away is get the work sessions televised so people can see how government operates. I think, on every...
You mean the
village work sessions. Before the regular board meeting, we have a work session where, you just discuss among yourselves the issues that you want to tackle in the future. And, usually that's not, it's public, people can come, but it's not on camera. We want to have it on camera, we want to have it televised, because I think what's going on is a lot of people in every level of government, people are skeptical of the process. They don't, they think it's all fixed. There's already preordained decisions, and we want to show people how it works, and we want to be as open and as above board as can possibly be to try and restore people's faith in local government.
But while work sessions are technically open to the public, it's not an opportunity for the public to be heard.
Unless you specifically allow that to happen. Usually not. No, it's just for the board to do their work.
But you just want it all to be out in the open.
We want it all to be out in the open. And then the other pressing issue I would say is getting a control on development and making sure that we control development and development doesn't control us.
Okay. Let me talk politics for one moment first, though.
Okay.
You now will have an all-Democratic board, which has happened before in the Village of Mamaroneck. But so you're mayor. What will be, in your eyes, the role of Republicans or your opponents in your administration?
Well, I think that listen, we have 5 Democrats on the board. There's no hiding that. But what you're dealing with is 5 individuals. On a party level, this isn't like there's a central authority that's going to tell us what we have to do because we're Democrats. We're still going to disagree. And I'm on an all-Democratic board right now in the town of Mamaroneck, and we disagree on issues, and we have our different points of view, and we negotiate that out, and we talk that out, and we work it out. And I imagine that's going to be happening on the on the Village of Mamaroneck level. When you're in a campaign, people say, "Oh, I'm going to vote for the Democrat or for the Republican." But you're not voting for parties on a local level. You're voting, what is this person's qualifications as opposed to that person's qualifications? And that's what I believe the voters do. So, while we all might, be registered Democrats, we're 5 distinct individuals. And, there isn't a Comintern that tells us what we have to do and, punishes us if we don't have to do it. And if you've ever been involved with Democrats, Democrats all, go their separate ways, and they all think they're right, and they all have their own opinions. They don't march in lockstep naturally.
Well, while this race wasn't really a contentious, it was a polite civil race. There's still a need to bring people together after an election. And what will you do to do that?
Well, I think the main thing that you do is you run meetings in a civil, orderly fashion. You appoint people to boards and commissions who are the best qualified person. You don't necessarily look at their party affiliations. You look at the qualifications of the person.
And actually, I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
Do you get to reappoint members of all the boards and commissions?
Well, no,
or they term out.
As they term out, you get to a point. You look and see who's up and who wants to serve, who doesn't want to serve, and then you ask people to submit their resumes. As a board, you vet the resumes and you make a decision as a group.
I just want to remind the listening public that you can call in and talk to Tom or email your questions, and we will put them through to him as soon as we get them.
Okay.
Let's move on to something you touched on before, the development, building development, which zoning, master plan, all of that. What do you intend to do? What's your vision?
Well, right now, I think we want to take a look at the master plan and update it when it needs to be updated. You want your master plan to be a reflection of what the community wants for the future. And then once we have the master plan updated, I think we're going to look at certain zones where there has been a lot of development, and to see, is the development that's happening now too big, and do we want to, reduce the floor area ratio, which means it would reduce the bulk and size of the building. And I don't know if we're at that point yet, but these are things we have to look at. And we have to look at, when we talk about zoning and planning now, we have to look at the impact to not just the tax base in the Village of Mamaroneck, but to the school system.
Well, let's talk about that, because the schools are facing this overcrowding. They are meeting, trying to figure out what to do. And there are a number of new developments on Boston Post Road.
Yes.
Do you expect that those are going to contribute?
I am sure those are going to contribute.
Were those rezoned for those projects, or were they just built as of right?
They were, well, when I was on a board last, we reduced the FAR for that area to C1 district. But originally, I believe there was supposed to be 17 apartments there, and now there's 7 in one and a few in the other. So we did reduce the bulk and the density, but there will be children there, and those children will be going to school, and this has an impact. As you know, there's over 500 more children in the school system than they had projected 5 years ago. That means, you need more classrooms, you need more teachers, you need more services. So while we build these developments, and the argument is, oh, it'll improve your tax base. It might, it's probably neutral on your village taxes, but when you talk about your school taxes, which is the majority of your tax, it's raising them.
Well, except that the people who are coming in will also be paying taxes.
Yeah, they'll also be paying taxes, but the problem is the condos and co-ops do not pay at the same rate as homes do. If you have $1 million condo and $1 million home, the home is paying much more than the condo in taxes because of the way New York real property tax law works.
So are you proposing that there be review of all projects, even if they're done as of right, to see what the effect will be?
I'm not talking about individual projects. I'm talking about the zone, and to see what's allowed in each zone. And are we turning our commercial zones really into residential zones? And how does that affect us? If you don't have a place to get your tires changed, if you don't have a place to go shopping for stuff, and you just have housing, how does that affect the community as a whole?
What's your view on the proposed maker zone?
You know what? I think it could be a good idea. I have to look at it more closely. I think that that area of Mamaroneck is probably the best place for development, because you don't have neighborhoods around it where people would be impacted as heavily. I think that obviously if we build anything down there, it's a flood zone, so it would have to comply with flood zone regulations. But it's an interesting idea, and I definitely keep an open mind and look at it, and I think that there's been a lot of hard work done on that issue. And it sounds better to me than the parking lots that are down there now, and it has less of an impact on our school system, and it might bring a renaissance to that area.
We have a question.
Okay.
There's a bit of an issue on the Leatherstocking Trail with bikes and unleashed dogs bothering people, especially the elderly. Are you aware of this, and will local resources enable something to be done?
Okay, well, the Leatherstocking Trail is not in the village of Mamaroneck. I was not aware of that problem, and it had not been brought to my attention.
And you've got 3 weeks to deal with it in the town.
I will relay that
okay.
to the town of Mamaroneck authorities. I hope that the LMC TV will copy that question for me, and I will relay that. And I had not been aware of that. And if people are supposed to have their dogs on leash in that area, we will see that the law is enforced.
Speaking about back to the proposed maker zone, in that whole area is a flooding problem, and we've got the Army Corps of Engineers. That project is moving along. What's your feeling about it?
Well, I think it's a needful project. I was a trustee in 2007 when they had the devastating floods, and it was a very difficult time for everybody in the community, and people's lives got impacted severely. And unfortunately, it usually is the case, the people who could least afford to lose anything lost everything, and it was heartbreaking in a lot of ways. So I want to see the Army Corps plan implemented. I want to make sure that as a community we have as much impact into shaping it for Mamaroneck, because the Army is very good at hitting a small nail with a very large hammer. So we want to make sure that that hammer fits our community. And in the planning stages, when we come more to design, I think we will have the ability to have that influence. But it's a source of funding that we can't turn our back on now, because people really need relief, and it's a public health hazard if we have a flood and people could die and emergency services cannot move around. It's all for the good if we can get it done right.
And it would only be part of a real flood mitigation plan.
Correct.
For the village.
Yes. Listen, there's no plan that's going to solve everything.
But you have other ideas. From listening to you on the Meet the Candidates, you and Nora had other things that had to be done.
Yes. We have to do maintenance of our sewers. We can elevate homes. We can not encourage people to live in a flood zone. And unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag with that. We've overdeveloped in the flood zone, and nobody ever thought about that 180, 60 years ago.
One of the things I hear a lot of complaints about, and you probably have also, is parking. What do you plan to do about unparking in the village?
Well,
and particularly in the business area.
In the business area, yeah. Well, I think that we have to look for ways to move cars along quicker. For people can't stay in one spot all day and enforce the 2-hour rule on the avenue. A lot of times people just keep feeding the meter, and you're supposed to turn over the spot after 2 hours. We have to see that people are doing that, and then we have to see that people are utilizing the spots that aren't on the avenue. There's a lot of spots, on Phillips Park Road, under the Regatta, at Hunter Lot, across the street from Old Village Hall, that are underutilized. So we want to direct people to, where we have extra spots, and we should do that through pricing. Make those spots more affordable. So if you want to walk, a couple of 100 yards, it might cost you less money, or if you have to park right in front of the store, maybe it'll cost you a little more money. But we're not looking to change the pricing structure as it is now. I think that's the way it's set up now. But
are you happy with how the meters are now?
I think we need new meters. I think we need single space meters like we have now. Those meters are probably getting near 20 years old. You can't see them half the time, and they break down a lot. You can't get parts for them. So we want to feed the meter. We want a meter that individual for each spot that'll take coins, and hopefully will take credit cards too. Because we're in the 21st century, and some people don't even carry cash anymore.
We have another question for you.
All right.
This year, the building department was criticized by neighbors after Ralph's and the Sandbox Theater incidents or issues. As new mayor, what would you do to avoid future problems like that?
Well, you know what? I think that's a good question. I think what we have to do, your building department is one of the most important departments in any community. It protects the life safety of the community, and we have to look to make sure that the building department is functioning properly. That when someone gets a permit, they were allowed to be in that area. Part of what happened with Ralph's is, the gentleman got a permit for an area where his use was not allowed, and that use then impacted the neighbors, gravely. And I feel for the man who opened his business, but I also feel for the neighbors. They didn't buy a house next to something that was going to be going on to 10, 11 o'clock at night, with large crowds, and it was a dangerous parking lot there. But I think that the main thing is make sure that the building department is functioning properly. I'll be honest with you, we heard a lot of complaints about the building department as we went door to door. So we'll see what can be done to rectify that. And I think that that's the main goal right now.
And someone else wants to know about the building inspector's raise.
You know what? I don't know. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to comment on why somebody got a raise or why somebody didn't get a raise. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved in that personnel decision, and it would be really unfair for me to make a comment upon that.
Well, is it true that there's been trouble keeping building inspectors?
There has been a turnover. I haven't been here, so I don't know why that happened, but I don't know. I do know that building inspectors are in high demand, and they kind of move from spot to spot with a better offer. I don't know what happened here, and I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to wrongfully make accusations that I don't have a basis for.
Is that something that's in the mayor's responsibility or the village manager's?
It's in the village manager's responsibility. He's directly overseeing that department. But at the end of the day, if it's not working properly, it's up to the elected official to go to the village manager and say, this isn't working. What are we going to do about it? And I believe that the village manager knows that, and we'll be addressing that.
What about taxes and keeping costs down? You have plans for that?
Oh, yeah, well, you know what, I think that, the goal is always to keep the tax rate under the cap. I'm confident that we'll do that, but, there has to be some growth. Employees get raises, and, gasoline costs more, and, you don't want to be in a situation either where you're artificially keeping the tax rate at zero, and then all of a sudden you have to jump up, or you're not able to do one of your functions. One of the things that folks around here want, they want a lot of services. And that's good. And I want a lot of services too. But
someone has to pay for them.
Yeah. And when you talk about changing services, people say, well, I pay a lot of taxes. Why shouldn't I get that service? I said, because that's why you pay a lot of taxes. And you know what? I use this as an example. You know, I grew up in New York City in the 60s and the 70s, and you know, back then, you know, you could be on fire, and you might wait 20 minutes for a cop or the fire department because they had cut services and cut. And I moved up here, and I realized that if, God forbid, there's an emergency, you know, the police will be there in a minute and a half at your home. And I'm willing to pay for that.
We have another question for
Yes.
you. In terms of flooding, in what stage of the Army Corps of Engineers plan are you within? I'm not sure I understand that. Will you be following in the former administration's plans, or will there be any changes?
Well, to my knowledge, right now, the plan's next step is to be accepted by the Army Corps and then presented to Congress for funding. So it goes to Congress for funding, and you know, people can see how Congress is doing these days. So hopefully, you know, while we're all still alive, it gets some funding and it comes back to us. And then we're in the design stage. And then we can really have impact as a community. What they've given us is a broad outline.
Right.
You know, now we have the ability, when it comes back from Congress, to be more specific.
At what point does the village have to commit and the county have to commit to money for the project?
I would imagine when the federal government, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to give you what I think.
Okay.
After the federal government commits the money, then it's, you know, then we have to go to the state and the county and ourselves.
Before you come up with the details of the plan?
I would believe so, but I'm not sure. And I don't want to act like I have the total authority on this, and I will find out.
Okay.
I'll know next week.
Okay. We are running out of time, but I did want to let you touch on quickly the environment. I've heard you talk about water quality and beach issues.
Yes.
What's your concern and what's your hope?
Well, you know what, I think that the positive is that all these communities in our area, Larchmont, us, the town of Mamaroneck, Rye, New Rochelle, we are all in the process, whether it's ordered by the DEC or in an agreement with the county, of fixing our sanitary sewers. And that is the cause of a lot of the pollution in Long Island Sound, especially in our harbor here. And you know, we need to make people aware that this is a costly but needful project. You know, no society can function properly if we can't get our sewage away from us. You know, bad things happen. Society breaks down when you know, you don't have a functioning sanitary sewer system. So we're gonna fix those pipes, and that overflow will then not be going into the harbor, and that'll help a lot. And then we have to make sure that, you know, we do the housekeeping, cleaning the streets so that the rainwater doesn't wash stuff into the harbor, making sure people don't throw their dog feces in the sanitary sewer, making sure when there's a construction site that it is properly protected from runoff, and you know, the construction debris isn't just running off into our sanitary sewer. You know, that's a very important aspect of keeping the environment clean, and it's the housekeeping stuff.
Okay. We're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope you won't be a stranger now that you'll be
don't
right
be
down
a
the
stranger.
street.
Yeah, no, I'll be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more community stories in a moment.
Did you know you could watch LMC TV anywhere? Yes, even there. Go to lmctv.org and scroll down the main page. Choose your channel and click Watch Now, then press play. You can watch whatever's live on our channel wherever you are. Want to watch a specific show on demand? Go to Videos, click on Category, or Shows to list by title, or by keyword in the search bar at the top right of the page.
It's all a click away at lmctv.org.
A small memorial has been created for the 2 New Rochelle residents that were killed last Saturday when their vehicle crashed into a garbage truck. The memorial, located between Mamaroneck High School and MD Express Urgent Care, was filled with flowers, candles, and balloons, and notes from loved ones mourning their loss. Police said the cause of the crash is under investigation, but it appears speed was a factor. Habitat for Humanity of Westchester's Walk for Homes and Joe Co Salon and Spa in Larchmont raised $10,500 for hurricane relief this past weekend. The money raised will go to those affected in Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico. Habitat for Humanity is planning trips to hurricane-affected areas and has sent 6,000 relief kits to those in need. In local high school sports, the fall athletic season has come to a close. LMC TV sports producer Rob Moretti has all the latest info on how your teams finished in the sectional and state playoffs.
Did you miss the fall playoffs on LMC Varsity Sports? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Let's start with boys soccer. First round action in the Class B bracket. Mamaroneck hosting Westlake. Scoreless with 4 minutes to go. John Cassius bends in a free kick. 1-0 Panthers. Then Thomas Crook with a long feed on a free kick finds the head of Jack Sheldon for the Panthers' second goal. 2-0 is your final score. On to the quarterfinals. It's Mamaroneck hosting White Plains. Early second half, a breakaway for White Plains' Carl Fisher, and he finishes the play with the game's only goal. The home Tigers season coming to a close at 12-4-2. Now for some field hockey. The top-seeded Mamaroneck Tigers playing host to the Scarsdale Raiders in the Class A semifinals, a rematch of last year's section title game. Sophie Brill scores once in the first half, then scores again 2 minutes later, and the Tigers hold on for a 2-0 win. Mamaroneck would go on to defeat Horace Greeley 5-0 to take the Section 1 championship, but drop the state quarterfinal toward Melville 3-1, ending a strong season at 18-2-1. Back to soccer, the Mamaroneck Panthers allowed no goals in 4 sectional playoff games en route to becoming the Section 1 Class B champions. They traveled to Lakeland to face Section 9 champion Rhinebeck in the New York State Regional Semifinal. Trailing 1-0 in the second half, John Cassius' corner kick finds Jack Sheldon's head, tie game. Let's move ahead now. A minute into double overtime, a free kick for Thomas Crook comes free in front of the goal, and Del Da Silva heads it in for the golden goal. The Panthers then face top-ranked Center Moriches in the state quarterfinal, and despite several chances, could not overcome a first-half goal by the Red Devils. With the 1-0 loss, they finish at 14-5-3. And finally, in volleyball, Mamaroneck hosted Pauling in a Class C semifinal match, winning in straight sets 25-12, 26-24, and 25-15. The Panthers then fell to Haldane in 4 sets in the final, finishing at 13-7. Winter sports start in just a few short weeks.
We always welcome new volunteers and interns, and we love hearing from our viewers. Send an email to thelocallive@lmctv.org. Thank you so much for watching our show. That's all for tonight. I'm Aurora Folks. See you next week for a new episode of Local Live. Good night.